Welcome back to another live episode of Red Tinted Glasses. Not very Christmassy after last night. Callum, hungover today?
Not so bad actually. This is mainly because on the way back to Kirkcaldy, I had a very sobering up experience on the train. It was actually probably the longest 45 minutes of the night, as it turns out, which sounds hard to believe, but we were sitting down and it was all fine, just me and my pal coming back to Fife. And then two people sat down. They started with, "Oh, we'll sit next to these girls." So that was a good start. And it was two about 30-year-old, you can only probably be described as Spice Boys or Spice Men perhaps, from Glasgow, who work in Dundee, who decided to go shopping and got steaming, and they were giving it all. One sported Celtic, one sported Rangers, and they were giving it all. It was weirdly a lot of your ma chat, which was interesting from a 30-year-old man. So it was just a terrible experience, and even worse than football somehow. A lot of sheep jokes. It was terrible, and even his pal wasn't finding them funny. So total disaster. But fine now.
Yeah, well, it can't have been as bad as the game was itself, as Aberdeen's away day misery continues. I don't know what the issue seems to be for us right now, but we can't get anything going away from home. As Aberdeen suffered a 1-0 defeat in Shaun Maloney's first game as Hibernian manager. A really kind of disappointing display, and I don't know whether the 11-day gap in between games maybe had something to do with it from an Aberdeen perspective, maybe lacking that bit of match sharpness that Hibs have had given their congested fixture run. But Aberdeen suffering, as many people seem to be right now, with the COVID outbreaks, forcing Scott Brown to miss out, and Alan Russell as well, missing from the sideline. He's currently isolating. And Ross McCrory was suspended for the fixture. Seeing Declan Gallagher make his first start in God knows how long in the centre of defence. And Dean Campbell, maybe surprisingly, coming in to replace Scott Brown for you, Callum. I thought maybe we might have seen Teddy Jenks come in there.
Yeah, possibly, but I think maybe the thing with Campbell is more he can sort of play a similar role to Brown in terms of that sort of anchor for the back four as well as cycling play and things. But in hindsight, maybe Teddy Jenks would have been better, maybe offered a bit more of an attacking threat. But I probably wasn't too surprised to see Campbell come in. Seeing Gallagher start, however, was very weird.
Yeah, I mean, look, based on the first half performance of both, you can't really have any complaints. I thought Gallagher looked solid in that first half. Dean Campbell, as usual, now that we went on to lose the games, being made out as the scapegoat as he tends to be in these situations when he plays and we don't win. But I actually thought he had a decent enough game coming into that midfield. It's you're replacing Scott Brown. It's always going to be a tough role to fill.
100%, and to be honest, I don't think I realised how much we would miss Scott Brown until last night. I think Campbell did okay, but didn't set the world alight. We obviously had a decent strike from range as well. Unlucky maybe not to hit the target there. Not too much complaints, but also when he's coming in from barely playing, when he has been playing, it's mainly been he was on the left side of the defence, whether that's at left centre back or left back. So maybe take a bit more time to get up to speed, but then presumably Scott Brown will come back in. Well, I don't know when's his isolation over, actually. Who knows?
Well, that's the thing. He's probably, he might not even play against Dundee on Boxing Day as well. And I think you say there, I don't think we realised how much we'd miss Scott Brown. I don't think we realised how much we would miss Ross McCrory. You look back at the start of the season, how critical we were of him at centre half, because he hasn't really performed there. But as we said in our previous episode, the partnership between him and David Bates has flourished in recent weeks. And okay, we're not consistently keeping clean sheets yet, but we're looking a lot more solid defensively. And we saw a change there. And certainly in the second half, which we will come on to, we did not look defensively solid throughout that second half, especially.
No, we did not. Yeah, we were just harping on about how much the partnership was going really well. Then we missed that he was suspended, and we really did miss him as well. Very unfortunate. Hopefully he'll come back in and stick to that same sort of level of performance he had been doing before, and hopefully strike that partnership back up. Declan Gallagher, he's just, I don't know what's going on. He must be probably frustrated as well, given he's missed through injury and even when fit, often on the bench. But he's just not been able to get going really for us, has he?
No, he's not, and it's an interesting one because people say, well, he's a Scotland international, but he's also, we were critical of David Bates when he first came in, and that you could reference his lack of match sharpness, and you could argue Declan Gallagher's still trying to find that after his hamstring injury, and he's not had that consistency that David Bates is now benefiting from. But the first half in general, Callum, I felt it was a really cagey game. Two teams trying to work each other out. Aberdeen, as usual, keeping trying to play that possession football, and we actually looked good with keeping the ball on the ground. And Hibs, it was a totally different style. You could definitely see that Shaun Maloney has tried to create something different there. There was a lot of pass, and they also tried to play quite a high press, I felt. I liked how Hibs TV tried to say that Hibs were playing like Belgium. Well, I think that's a bit kind on that. But as I say, you were at the game. How did you feel that first half panned out?
From memory, it wasn't very enjoyable. I think you're right in most of your analysis there, and also what you said earlier in that we thought maybe we'd be fresh, players get a bit of a rest, and then have time to focus on solely the Hibs game with plenty of time on the training ground. Not certain what they had been working on based on that first half. In my opinion, it was very, very poor. I think we did look okay in terms of keeping the ball at times, as you said. But really, really lacking in that final third, whether it's a final ball or just taking a shot on, taking a chance to have a go and test Matt Macey, which we really didn't do much of at all.
No, we didn't, and that's for all the nice play that we showed, and it's same old story with Aberdeen this season. In a large parts is that we do some nice stuff with the ball, but our end product is severely lacking, and it reared its head again last night at Easter Road, where for large spells of that first half we were getting into attacking areas. Jet again, I have to say I thought he was good in that first half. He provided us an out ball. He got caught out with, which led to Hibs' best chance when Josh Doy got down the left-hand side of Hibs. But we linked well with the front three, Ryan Hedges, Ramirez, Watkins. Johnny Hayes was benefiting down our left-hand side as well. Cadden for Hibs somehow evading a booking in that first half for his countless fouls, but yet to be surprised by a refereeing decision this season. Alan Muir continuing the trend of shite Scottish referees. But you're absolutely right. For all the good work we did in the first half with that ball, I just felt it was either that last pass or that final decision in the last third really let us down, and we didn't really force Macey into a good save. You're absolutely right. It was that Lewis Ferguson shot from outside of the box ended up going for a corner, but the only other real chance I remember was Dean Campbell's shot from distance, and then again Macey doesn't even get a fingertip on that to put it round the post. We didn't make him work, and we're going to come on to it obviously the second half, but I only really remember him having one decent save to make, and that was a fairly straightforward save from Marley Watkins late in the second half.
I do recall Ryan Hedges' header, I think it was perhaps as well. Just very, very, very frustrating that we didn't test him nearly enough. Of course, Michael's asked a lot of questions of him, and we did not do enough to test him. I should say, Dean Campbell strike going wide, which he hit well, to be fair, just unfortunate not to get on target. I think if it does, maybe it creeps into that bottom corner, but not enough for me. Just very, very frustrating. Again, sort of flattering to deceive quite a lot of the time. Just same old story, as you said, with Aberdeen this season so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just one of those kind of frustrating nights that has just been the story of our season. But for, the hype around Hibs and, the new manager bounce that they might have taken from the appointment of Shaun Maloney, I thought we nullified Hibs reasonably well in that first half. As I said, the only real opportunity came when Ojo's caught up field, and Jet's not renowned for his tracking back, it's fair to say, and he's not always shown the freshest set of heels when he's trying to run for a ball, and let alone chase down Josh Doig. And his ball into the box found Martin Boyle, and Declan Gallagher, I thought, does really well to block the initial shot from Martin Boyle, and then probably thankful that the rebound falls to Kevin Nisbet, who fluffs his line and heads over. And to be fair, that was the best chance of the first half from either side. But as a whole, in terms of Aberdeen defensively, I thought we were sound enough in that first half, kind of really limiting Hibs to balls into the box. And yeah, I thought, well, we're doing our job. If we can just get things to click at the right end of the pitch, we could maybe sneak it.
Definitely, I don't think there was too many scares in that first half anyway. It did. I don't think either side, played particularly well. Actually, that probably was the best chance. Felt like, as you say, cagey sort of first half. Just really, really frustrating. I thought at times perhaps there was a lack of a willingness to sort of run at Hibs when there was grass in front of them, especially in the second half, which we'll get on to, which I don't even want to talk about, and that'll be fun. But it was poor. I expected better last night, especially given the recent news of that might be the last game in front of a decent crowd for a while.
Yeah.
Who knows what will happen with that? I just thought it was poor. However, they did report that there was 14,000 people at that game yesterday, which there's no chance of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of empty green seats, it's fair to say, but it looked a very boisterous away end, but unfortunately nothing to cheer in that. But it's a good point you make, because in that first half, for the kind of, as I said, we looked good going forward, but there was times when and again, kind of harps back to that decision making, where we went for a pass instead of maybe a player getting a shot off, or I think there was a couple of times where Ryan Hedges and Marley Watkins went to take on the man instead of spreading that ball wide. There's a couple of times Jet and Ojo were out on the right wing looking for the ball. We went to take on the man, and you just kind of ran into traffic, and it just kind of summed up our season almost at times, where for all the good work we do with the ball, we're just not clinical enough.
Definitely. I think at times it's sort of lack of cutting edge or whatever, maybe missing that final ball, as we've mentioned. But also some of the, as you said, especially with those sort of situations, the decision making at times is so poor. Electing to either pass it when they could maybe run at a player, or vice versa when there's a sea of bodies in front of them and they decide to try and take them all on. It's just frustrating, and you start to wonder how long it'll take to click. It's just so annoying that every time we get 3 good results in a row, it now starts to go belly up again.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, it was just now the downhill trend of our roller coaster season that we're on. But as I said, the first half I felt was cagey. Both sides were pretty much cancelling each other out. Did you feel at the game that a change was needed? Or would you have been quite happy if we came out with that same 11 at the start of the second half?
Yeah, I think I would have been happy. I was quite surprised to hear that it was a halftime change. I was not surprised that it was Jet going off recent substitutions. But in terms of performance, I wouldn't say he did much to warrant being hooked at halftime, really.
Yeah.
Especially when we look at the games, particularly I think Ryan Hedges was really, really poor. Ferguson at times, and then he went on to bark at Ramsey for playing a ball short. But in games like that, you're looking at Ferguson to take this on to him. He's been a big game player for us, I suppose, previously, popping up in big moments, harking back maybe to Burnley and sort of the winner at Hampden against Rangers. But he just didn't. I felt he didn't do enough to take the game by the scruff of the neck, and it's been mentioned a few times, on social media and things. But Hedges flatly deceive a lot of the time too.
Yeah, we'll come on to Ryan Hedges specifically a bit later on in the episode. So I want to talk about him and kind of where he's leaving us, really, literally and metaphorically, I suppose. But it's kind of interesting because I didn't really feel that a sub at halftime was needed. Obviously, Stephen Glass seeing something that needed. Maybe Jet picked up a knock. But the bringing on Calvin Ramsey was a real strange one for me because, going on the last few games, you would have maybe suspected Teddy Jenks, allow him to kind of continue his fine form of recent weeks. pick up where he's left off. He's been heavily involved in scoring and grabbing an assist in the last 2 games as well. So to see Calvin Ramsey, obviously great to see him back in terms of fitness, but from a personal point of view, I thought we just looked a totally different side second half. We looked nervous defensively. Ojo just was lost in that midfield, which is really strange given he's supposed to be a midfielder, but he actually seems suited at right back right now. But yeah, the whole dynamic of the team just didn't work. And it kind of stemmed from that substitution. And as I said in the group chat this morning, I never thought I would say this, but I actually felt we missed Jet when he went off. We missed that out ball. If we were under pressure, he's up lump. You can target him, he'll hold the ball up and then start the attack. We didn't have that in that second half. And Calvin Ramsey, he's good going forward, but he left space in behind that Hibs were willing to exploit and exploited Declan Gallagher's lack of pace. We spoke about previous seasons, Martin Boyle exploiting the likes of Andy Considine. Well, him and Scott Allen were having all sorts of fun against Declan Gallagher and Bates at times. But I don't know, was it at the game? Because certainly the first 10 minutes of that second half, watching at home, it was really grim. Did you sense that change hadn't worked at the game?
My senses were maybe a little bit skewed.
Yeah, but too many Soko lemons might have impaired your thoughts here.
Possibly, yeah. To be fair, I don't know if it. I didn't think maybe it affected us negatively, but I don't think it had a positive impact. Maybe. I think possibly you're right. They do miss that sort of outball and jet. It's something different for their defence to worry about. They've got Paul McGinn there, and they're not world beaters. They're hardly Cafu. It's and the lack of willingness to go at him at times as well was appalling. But I don't feel that it worked. I think maybe with Calvin Ramsey perhaps able to cut him some slack after missing out so much. Still a kid, I suppose as well. But it was just frustrating. I think Jenks, as you mentioned, perhaps might have been a better shout, especially since we've seen him going to that. In fact, Jet for Jenks has often been the substitution they've went to. But it just seemed a little bit unbalanced, I suppose, in a sense. Which
that's a good word. Yeah,
disrupted things a little bit. A good word from me. Thank you very much, Glenn.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, well, it was funny because we're going to come on to the goal, and I felt our right side especially was unbalanced, to use your word there, because of that substitution. But Fitba Daddy replied to us on Twitter last night saying, it was something about causation doesn't equal correlation. Just because Ramsey's come on doesn't mean that that's the fault, or he was the reason for dragging Declan Gallagher down. I'm glad you're not too hungover, because I think I'd have blown your brain with that saying totally.
Oh, I was really, really tired. I'm not going to lie. It took a little bit.
But, I mean, you even looked at it, as soon as that second half started, I can't remember who played the ball to Ramsey, but he had a poor first touch, and Josh Doig was on him straight away, and Declan Gallagher was slow to come over. I remember texting Broom, and we were all both like, what a horrible start to the half. Hibs were straight on that front foot, and I think Declan Gallagher more so didn't really recover from that incident. And it's great to have folk tuning into this episode. We are live across YouTube and Twitter, and Drew the Loon coming into the comments saying that Tommy Hoban is greater than Declan Gallagher. Let's be honest, what a strange signing. And again, go back to the point you were making there, Callum, about the match sharpness of Declan Gallagher in recent weeks. But when you look at the likes of what we did have, a Tommy Hoban, an Ash Taylor, for example, is Declan Gallagher an upgrade from what we had?
No. I think when they brought in Declan Gallagher, basically to put it bluntly there, I remember Stephen Glass talking about signing leaders. I think that was possibly the sort of idea they were going to do, given he was Motherwell captain, obviously had experience playing with Scotland as well. But yeah, he doesn't seem up to the standard. I don't think, even in terms of a defender, I think Tommy Hoban far better with the ball. But even as a defender, doesn't seem to be an improvement at all. And it's also, sorry to bring Mickey Devlin into this, but if you're going to keep one of those two on at the end of last season, you would have thought Tommy Hoban perhaps, and then you could still bring in Gallagher if you wanted that leadership. And as you mentioned as well, Ash Taylor, again, he's probably limited. He liked a Hollywood ball at times. At times it paid off, times terrible. But as a defender, you're looking for someone. Even he's, I think, probably in a better position to be than Declan Gallagher in terms of just as defence rather than looking as a ball player, perhaps.
Yeah, and I suppose, to pick up that point you made in referencing Devlin, can't see why we let Ash and Tommy go there from BCRL. And I suppose that's either these players didn't suit the style of football that Stephen Glass wanted to play. It's a strange one because, while we are trying to get Ash Taylor on the podcast, waiting for a response from him, Walsall have made contact with Ash to see if he'll come on, but it'll be certainly one to maybe find out if it was Ash's own decision to leave or it was linked to something else. But once again, we've been speaking the last few episodes about second half performances from Aberdeen and how we don't really get going, and once again we didn't get going in the second half at all, really. And the only real chance, if you want to call it that we had in the second half, was when Ryan Hedges closed down Macy's attempt to clear the ball. And that's the only thing I can really recall us doing in the second half until we went 1-0 down.
Basically, and I appreciate the fact that you obviously can't press teams like that, throughout the whole 90 minutes. But there did seem to be at times, lack of willingness to do that when they saw that, especially Macy probably uncomfortable with the ball at his feet. Paul Hanlon, not notoriously great. Porteous, capable of mistake every now and then, which we will get onto that, man. Very frustrating. But it was interesting. It was interesting that happened. And but you put Matt Macy under pressure, whether it's from crosses or with the ball at his feet, he's not great. He might be a good shot stopper or whatever, but that's not his forte, that kind of thing. And I say that it was basically before going 1-0 down. That was one of the few chances, if it's even that, a chance for Hedges to perhaps win the ball, or maybe it's lucky that it might ricochet into the back of the net, but obviously it didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen. And there was I can't remember if this was a 0-0 or 1-0, but there was Gallagher got caught on the ball and dispossessed by Scott Allen, I'm sure it was, and he tried to slip in a through ball to Martin Boyle, and Bates bailed him out superbly with a last-ditch block to prevent the ball getting to Martin Boyle, which would have almost certainly ended up being 1-0 had the ball reached him. And he just felt something was coming from a defensive side from Aberdeen, and that Hibs were going to benefit from that. And a few moments later, both Calvin Ramsey and Declan Gallagher have opportunities to clear this ball. Both choose not to. It's almost like they're playing hot potato in the corner by giving it back to each other. And ultimately, Declan Gallagher ends up conceding the corner. Now, the first corner is not dealt with greatly by Aberdeen and results into a second from the opposite side, which Martin Boyle kind of drills in a reasonable height, and Declan Gallagher's caught ball watching. Because, I watched the replays a couple of times, and I don't actually think he's got a man specifically to mark. But Ryan Porteous seems to be unmarked, and he gets in there and powers a header into the back of the net. And just another cheap, soft goal conceded. Almost, you look back to the game at Tannadice, where from a corner, we're ball watching, a player gets a free run at the ball and a free side of the goal. And I'm not apportioning any blame to Joe Lewis for last night. There's nothing he can do with that header. But again, it's too easy in terms from an Aberdeen point of view in the manner that we're conceding.
I think it has to be said, it was a good header. He got on target, and then that's probably most you can ask of Porteous there. But I remember when the big corner, they've got the big screen at Easter Road, and I watched I think they replayed the goal. I just remember thinking, he's as free as a bird in there, nobody picking him up.
Yeah.
And it would be almost harder not to get a header on target and score when you've got no one challenging you. Very, very, very frustrating. For a team that's so good offensively from set pieces, don't have like giving away a goal for ourselves from them, do we?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I had down there. And again, does this show how good McCrory has actually been at centre back in recent weeks? Highlighting how poor we were defensively. And another comment coming in from Can't Be Bothered, which is maybe how you felt this morning when you knew you had to do this live review, was get Craig Halkett signed on a pre-contract from Hearts and bin Declan Gallagher. And, Craig Halkett's probably a player that goes under the radar a bit, and we'll kind of come on to that next week after the Dundee game when we do a show. We'll kind of look towards the January transfer window and players or certainly areas of the pitch we feel we need to strengthen in. So that's certainly one that we'll keep in mind as a suggestion for strengthening in that area. But Callum, it was Ryan Porteous that did score the goal. I know you're eager to talk about this. Was he lucky to stay on the pitch or be on the pitch by the time he scored? Because obviously he was involved in an incident that was not flagged for a foul by the referee with Christian Ramirez, where he seems to lash out and connect in a rather sensitive area. Not for the first time that Christian Ramirez has been targeted there this season.
Thank goodness Christian Ramirez has already had 2 children, honestly, because he could be in danger otherwise. First thing I'd like to say on this is, do I look happy? No, I don't, because there's no way he should have been on that pitch. Alan Muir is absolutely awful. He was a mere matter of feet away from that and completely missed it. I don't think there was even a free kick given, let alone, a caution or a talking to, nothing like that. It's a clear kick out at Christian Ramirez, but let's not forget, Ryan Porteous isn't that type of player. As much as it's funny when he does these things against Rangers, etc., but let's be honest, even in those incidents, he is a bit of a maniac. He's far too aggressive at times, and potentially one of the reasons why it could cost him in his career, I suppose. In terms, because he could, if he cut that out of his game, he's a good defender. Okay, at times he's giving the ball away cheaply and could cost Hibs goals, but he's also decent with the ball too. But that kind of streak of the game lets him down, and ultimately he should have been on the pitch. But at the same time, when that he's done that, and it's the referee's job to spot that and subsequently take action. But how many times do we see Alan Muir miss out on things like that, let alone other referees that are just simply not good enough at all in any way, shape or form? They are awful in Scotland, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very telling the fact that Christian Ramirez has since tweeted just before we went live, actually, and so managed to see it, questioning whether or not it was intentional from Ryan Porteous. And certainly Keith texted me as soon as the incident happened or the replays were shown, saying that Ryan Porteous knows exactly what he's doing there. There's a lot of force behind the way he brings the leg down. And the more you see it, the more it does look like he knows what he's doing. But yeah, he's just having a laugh. He doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. But, it kind of goes back to earlier in the season when he found himself getting sent off at Ibrox. It's kind of that habit. People know what he's like, and he gets attributed to that. And yeah, he's just that bit of a bomb scare. And unfortunately, we didn't manage to test that ticking time bomb enough in terms of going forward and kind of let him have his own way.
In terms of retrospective bans or whatever, I don't know what they can do about that. I suppose since the referee didn't give a free kick or anything, he didn't see it, I guess. So they could perhaps give a retrospective ban, but obviously that's no use to us, so I don't really care that much. But you mentioned the force there. I think if his foot comes down naturally, those kind of things happen a lot of the time. But you see the increase in force that he does it with, and then he laughs about it. I think there's a screw loose there. What? He just loves causing bodily harm to people.
He loves hurting people. And another Hibs player maybe more so known from his Aki's days in terms of hurting people or certainly disrupting the play, was Alex Gogic. No surprise when he came onto the pitch that it didn't take long for him to find his way into the referee's book. More surprising though that Alan Muir actually remembered to book somebody, given the performance of Chris Cadden in that first half, because how he escaped a booking last night, I will never know. But in the second half, Dean Campbell is driving forward and Gogic pulls him back, or he either pulls him back or clips his ankles. No free kick, play on. Hibs retain possession and break forward. Lewis Ferguson does the exact same thing, and it's immediately a free kick to Hibs. Now, Gogic at this time is also on a booking, and I was screaming to Bruno Keith last night, saying, how is that not a foul? And potentially not a second booking to Alex Gogic at that point in time, because that was 0-0 when that incident happened.
As much as her decision, it also just doesn't surprise me with Alan Muir. I mean, perhaps the most notable incident in recent years, as funny as it was at the time, that Josh Meeking's handball at Hampden from Vanessa against Celtic, he literally feet away from that as well and missed it completely. He is absolutely hopeless. How that man is still refereeing at this level after that incident, and let alone still continues to make errors like this and still gets gigs, let alone in a pretty big game between Hibs and Aberdeen, I suppose. Honestly, it's absolutely ridiculous, but he is hopeless. And but just before I forget, since you mentioned Ferguson, that reminded me. Late on in the game, Macy's got the ball in his hands, and he decides to go and lift his leg as if he's going to get away with that. When he's waiting to pump the ball up the park, and you've got 50-50 chance of an Aberdeen player winning it, and then a chance perhaps to go at them again. Instead, they get to waste more time, get a free kick down on the deck. What is the point, Lewis Ferguson? That just proves you're Ferguson, doing stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, but the weird thing about it as well is that Alan Muir didn't give a free kick. It was the fourth official that alerted him to that and then gave him a booking. And Hibs TV were keen to think he was looking for Boxing Day or New Year off until they realised that the New Year games were already off. But yeah, just a stupid booking when it's quite easily to accumulate bookings and miss games. Although, you know, who knows what's going to happen with Lewis Ferguson in a couple of weeks as well, whether he'll still be here when the season resumes late January, and whether or not Boxing Day against Dundee will be his last game for the club. But Callum, after going 1-0 down to that Ryan Porteous header, it's safe to say Aberdeen didn't really respond, or certainly immediately respond to the loss of the goal. How disappointing was that reaction to going 1-0 down for you?
Very, very poor. I highlighted it earlier in the show. The lack of the willingness to drive at Hibs, the lack of urgency, it's just so frustrating. And especially, you know, in a game like that where it's tight in the table, it's the last game in front of a pretty decent crowd for a while. It was so poor, and we've said it as well. Not testing Matt Macy. If he'd pulled off a couple of blinders of saves, absolutely fine by me. That's okay. Frustrating. Maybe should have done better, but oh well. But we didn't even create those chances, and the urgency was just lacking. The tempo was too slow and laboured at times. You know, when there's grass in front of them, they're choosing to still play it wide, and then it's another couple touches, then another pass. Where's the attacking, free-flowing football?
Yeah, well, certainly second half, but this is actually a really good point coming in on the comments by Can't Be Bothered. We missed Scott Brown last night because he'd have been in the ref's ear constantly, and that was kind of my next point I was going to bring up. You mentioned there about the attacking football. The second half got broken up consistently by the referee. Every corner seemed to be a foul before the ball even reached the box. There was no flow to the game in that second half after Hibs took the lead. It was probably top shithousery, it was top time wasting, whatever you want, game management, whatever you want to call it. But for some of these niggly fouls, I think that's an excellent point. We did miss Scott Brown probably giving the referee a reminder. I mean, that's his third or fourth foul. Where's the consistency? Where's that yellow card that we would have maybe been on the receiving end? And yeah, you spoke about it earlier in the show there about missing maybe that leadership from, you know, Lewis Ferguson, for example, someone stepping up into that role. And yeah, I think it's an excellent point. I think we did miss that last night.
Also, then you could turn to sort of Declan Gallagher for that kind of thing. He's been a captain.
Yeah.
He's sort of one of the more experienced players, one of the few experienced players in that side, let's be honest, that could do that kind of thing. But very frustrating. I couldn't help but let a wry smile, however, there when you suggested that Scott Brown says him and how many he's getting away with. I would love to hear him even attempt to say that.
Yeah, considering if those of you that have watched his interview on Red TV, he laughs at folks saying loons and quines. So I'd love to hear him say that as well. But Callum, even from the substitutes bench, we brought on Teddy Jenks for Dean Campbell just past the hour mark, but it didn't really have any impact on the game. I don't actually remember how many times he touched the ball, and late on we brought on Connor McLennan, but again, and this is nothing on Connor McLennan, but it felt another ineffective substitution.
Yeah, basically. I was quite complimentary of McLennan actually as well. So after this Johnson game, I thought came on and had a good effect. But to be fair, I don't think he was any worse than anyone else that we had up there at the same time too. But yeah, just another ineffective change. Once again, Austin Samuel's been left on the bench. Well, we've got an option to buy him. Will he be here past January?
Yeah,
I don't see that.
Yeah, well, again, that's another thing that we'll come on to after the Dundee game, looking at, what players will still be here in January. Would you end the loans signings? And it was just constantly frustration in that second half. And you always feel in these tight games you're going to get that one opportunity, and that one opportunity came to Marley Watkins. Christian Ramirez does really well on the left-hand edge of the box to deliver a perfect cross. And Marley Watkins, I just don't think he connects properly with it. He does all the right things, heading it into the ground, but it just bounces up at a perfect height for Macy to tip round the post for a corner. And we've spoke about testing Macy. Michael's been critical of Macy. He was in the before Hibs came to Tawdry, and cautious of what you'd be like for last night's game. But that's probably the hardest save he had to make last night.
Definitely, and it's even then, it's a good save, but it's fairly routine. And if he doesn't get there, then you would be asking serious questions of him. The fact that's all we really tested him with, Michael's being critical of him with crosses and things like that as well. We just didn't do enough, didn't do nearly enough. Very, very frustrating, just lacking that cutting edge, the decision making, poor, and just same old story really for us, I feel, in the final third of a lot of this season.
Yeah, absolutely, and I suppose it's just a same old story away from home. Still, just the 2 wins, both huge helping hands in achieving. Max Richek and Teddy Jenks, both having their helping hands in ensuring that we have actually picked up 2 away wins this season, and that's got to be a concern for Stephen Glass going into the second half of this season, because we need to keep some form of consistency. I said last night, outside of the, maybe a couple of dodgy decisions at Ibrox, we haven't looked like winning away from home. That Livingston game where we won in the last minute, let's be honest, we didn't look like winning that game. St Johnstone didn't really look like winning. Yes, I know St Johnstone hit the post and we came close with a couple of opportunities, but it took up, let's be honest, a fortunate decision, which is much needed. To go in our favour to get that point. So it is a real cause for concern.
Yeah, massively. Especially when, as you mentioned, look at the context of the 2 away wins we've had. Totally undeserved. Obviously, we've said Portis should have been sent off, shouldn't have been on the pitch to score a goal. Teddy Jenks' goal should never have scored it. I'm glad it did, but it should have stood. And then, as you mentioned, Max Straycheck, just 2 shots that he somehow let go by him. It's really, really poor. Imagine if we end the season with 4 away wins out of the possible 19. That is atrocious. And something that needs to look. I don't understand why, really, because at times, although the Red Shed's, good in backing them at Tawdry, then you've got the away end, and I don't understand why they can't carry that on away from home. Obviously, these things do make a difference somewhat, but the professional footballers, why are we struggling so much?
Yeah, it's a real cause of concern, and I suppose last night you picked up Ryan Hedges. Ryan Hedges looks set to leave Aberdeen, certainly in the summer, if not January. It was a performance that kind of split opinions last night, and certainly towards the back end of the game, there was a couple of opportunities where it was so evident he is dominantly left-footed, where he didn't want to get to the byline and cross the ball. He cut back on his left, and it was easily blocked. I think it was by Doig. I'm not too sure, but do you feel the time is right for Ryan Hedges to move on? And if he does go, should it be in January rather than signing a pre-contract with a team down south, if that's where he ends up going?
It's a tough one. I think, first of all, I think it's a toss-up between who's more one-footed between him and Johnny Hayes. But moving on from that, it's difficult because we all know what he's capable of. On his day, absolutely brilliant. He can cause anyone problems in this league. But right now, it doesn't look like he really wants to be here, which I think is part of the problem. You'd like to probably keep a player like him of his quality around until the end of the season because, as we said, he can unlock defences. Maybe on a pre-contract, then he's got his moves. He's settled. He knows what's going to happen. Perhaps in his head, he's a little bit more content with that happening. So maybe that's what's best in terms of keeping him around. But then I suppose you can look at getting a fee for him in January and then hopefully reinvesting that in the squad. And BCRL mentioned perhaps Calvin Ramsey, the right midfielder we could be looking at. I think that's fair because I don't think he's quite as good defensively as he is going forward. And keep Ojo at right back, which I think if anyone said that at the start of the season, we'd have thought they were mad. But on the basis of the last few weeks, I would not be inclined to disagree with that.
Yeah, or sign a midfielder from St Mirren of Irish descent, first name Jamie, be a good addition to the squad. Certainly, strengthen. We've seen what he's capable of this season, and I think he would be a good addition to the team if we could get him in. One in, one out. Like I said, free up wages from Hedges, but we've touched on maybe Longstaff Samuel's going away, and that would free up wages as well. I wouldn't be against that signing if we can get that over the line. Ryan Hedges, as good as he is, I think the biggest frustration is the level of consistency isn't shown enough from him. If we can get that from the likes of Jamie McGrath, then I'd be excited by that.
Yep, certainly.
Yep, so it is back to home comfort on Boxing Day. The game is set to go ahead in front of a crowd of 500 fans after the Scottish Government announced the latest set of coronavirus restrictions that will come into effect Scottish sports. So the game is being played in front of 500 fans, and the winter break has been brought forward to take effect after the Boxing Day game. Callum, what's your initial thoughts on the new restrictions being applied to sporting events in Scotland?
Oh dear. I think it's frustrating. It's frustrating. I can understand in a sense that why they're doing it. I think a lot of it's to do with in terms of emergency services, freeing them up as well. But at the same time, it's just very frustrating. Given we've done all that is asked of us. Finally got a sport back. Finally getting it going again, and when it's festive fixtures as well. That's for a lot of people what they look out for. You've just had Christmas and then you get the Boxing Day game with your family, whatever. The New Year game, which was particularly appetising, given it was the Mallard we were going to be getting to go to. Not even bothered about Frost County at all. It is very, very annoying. I'm very glad, however, that SPFL, SFA, whoever it was, has seen sense, which it's not like them. I think it would be very hard for them to not do that, given it's the most logical thing. But obviously, had to get it agreed with Sky, and it is the Scottish football authorities that we are talking about here. So it still wouldn't have surprised me if they did not do it. So I'm glad that that's been brought forward. Let's just hope that by that time, when that rolls around, that we are allowed back to games.
Yeah, no, it's just the best time of year for football. It's like you said, it's the chance of meeting up with your friends that you might not have seen because they've been away at uni, or it's probably the games where families as a whole attend that's not a cup semi-final or final, and it's good day outs to look forward to, and sometimes it's seen as a good excuse to avoid the in-laws. And no offense, Kevin, if you're watching, but did you apply to be part of that 500 for Boxing Day, Carl?
I have, because I just like going to football. No, but especially on Boxing Day, it is always really nice being able. You've just had Christmas, and then you can get to football. It's a very, very big game in terms of the football calendar, and even though it won't be the same at all, like 500 people, I applied in the hope that it'll happen, because I just think it would be nice. It would be nice to get along, even though it would just be very bizarre, especially after having been to games with more crowds for the past 4 months or whatever.
Yeah, and although clubs are still doing the pay-per-view packages just now, which is obviously how I managed to get to watch the game last night, even though Red TV absolutely shut the bed most of the first half, constantly dropping out, but the Hibs TV stream worked no problem. It's just not the same as being there, especially for home games. Away games, obviously people have got families, kids, other commitments, that they can't always make these games, but home games people always make time for. It's the one that if you're Aberdeen at home, that's fine, I'll be at Tawdry this weekend or whenever they're playing, and to just chuck it behind a certain limit of fans or not for anybody to view, it's just not the same. I had the darts on the big TV in Aberdeen on the laptop last night, and at times in that second half I was finding myself more interested in the darts, because it was arguably more exciting than what was going on at Easter Road. But we talked about this all last season. It's hard to maintain an interest when you're not physically at the game. And Dave Cormack, he's as outspoken as ever, and last night he continued that trend of tweeting the First Minister, whilst we were currently losing to Hibernian, which we'll come on to on that. And he asked, on behalf of Scottish football fans, including those home for Christmas who plan ahead to attend games with their families, we at Aberdeen respectfully ask the First Minister to consider delaying the 500 fan limit until midnight on the 26th. Thank you in advance. Now, what do you make of Dave Cormack's approach here, just taking to Twitter and tagging Nicola Sturgeon in his appeal? Is it unprofessional? Is it him just showing his transparency? Do you think it should have been a written statement released by the club and then Dave chucked out a tweet after? Or do you think he's doing this in the best interest for the fans?
I suppose, given it's on a public forum, then there's a chance for the fans to show their support for that kind of thing. But at the same time, I don't think Nicola Sturgeon's going to listen to Dave Cormack, of all people. Yeah. Makes a change from Gary Forbes' tweet now, to be fair. But I think it's a fair question to ask, I suppose. But I just think the way that it's done is a bit... Yeah, he perhaps could have done it a bit more professionally, and then perhaps it's maybe more likely to happen. Not that I think it'll happen. Anyway, it would be nice. I think even if you're going to limit capacity, limiting every stadium to 500, as I say, I understand that it's be able to have the emergency services available for other reasons, which are obviously more important than football. We're not saying that football is the most important thing in the world, but limiting it to 500 doesn't matter whether it's Celtic Park or Edinburgh City, which I believe can only hold about 500 people anyway. It seems a bit bizarre. I think a certain percentage of the each stadium or something would have been a bit more logical, and I think they have said that, to be fair, they just picked 500 because they needed to draw the line somewhere, which is interesting. It's an interesting take, but oh well.
Yeah, and I think obviously what's riled a few folk is the fact he's decided to tweet this during a game that we are currently losing. Had he waited till full time, I don't know if he would have even made a difference if he'd done it at halftime to folks' thoughts on that. But look, it's Dave Cormack style. We've just got to get used to that, whether you agree or disagree. And I suppose, into January, whether or not, if you want to get your football fix, get down to that Highland League club, Lowland League, if you're listening down south, go out and support those teams that need it most. I saw Montrose tweeting last night, having a go at Tom English. Their crowd was 498 after Tom English said, football with crowds of 500 is just a misery. well, if you're like me and have taken in Highland League games this season or in seasons gone by, those games are great entertainment, regardless how many folk are there. You don't need, thousands to just have an entertaining game of football. And these teams will struggle just as much with these restrictions. So if you can support, other teams whilst, it was my plan anyway during the winter break was to take in a couple of Highland League games. So get along and support your more local club than if you're outside of Aberdeen, and help them during these times. But Callum, we should speak about the game on Boxing Day as Dundee come to town, looking for their first win at Tawdry since May 2004. And we've been speaking about how poor Aberdeen's away form has been this season. Dundee have only got one league away win. I don't think they needed a helping hand to get it though. But maybe encouraging the fact that we're coming up against an opponent that struggles just as much as us away from home.
Yeah, definitely, and especially since I presume they won't have any sort of backing from travelling
they'll
support.
Just be home fans.
There we go. I mean, literally no reason to not win this game. I know we have lost to Dundee already this season, but we are better than them. We have a better squad available to us, whether Brown's involved or not. Regardless, we should still be going out and beating Dundee, especially at home, and given their away form as well. There's every reason to be confident, even with that performance last night at Easter Road, and hopefully we'll get this win before the winter break. We seem to be going into breaks for everything these days now.
Yeah, we do indeed, and I suppose we should be encouraged by the fact that we're going to have Ross McCrory back for this game. And I just think, obviously, last night's highlighted the importance of him to this team in defence in particular. Do you expect any other changes other than Ross McCrory? Obviously, we're still unsure. We spoke about earlier about Scott Brown's COVID situation and whether or not he'll be fit. But if he's not fit, do you expect Dean Campbell to maintain his starting position?
I would say possibly. I think if Jenks is going to come in and start a game, it's probably more likely to be Dundee at home than Hibs. But in terms of Campbell, I don't think there's any reason for him to not start. And perhaps if we need to go more offensive, you can bring on Teddy Jenks, whether it's for him or somebody else. Obviously, as you say, McCrory expected to come back in. Ramsey will be my voice cracked there. Ramsey will be an interesting one because obviously going into you'd like when he's coming back from injury to get as much minutes into his legs as possible, but we're about to go into a winter break anyway. So is it worth trying to force him back in to give him a start and then perhaps risking more injury, or who knows? I think that'll be one to watch, especially given his performance as well and how Ojo's been performing at right back. It'd probably be harsh on Funso, but I expect that to be the only other change, if any more.
Yeah, and that's actually a really interesting point, Callum, because I've been speaking to Dens Park Choir this morning on Twitter to get some thoughts from the away perspective. And obviously we're doing this live on YouTube. So thank you to those of you currently tuning in and interacting in the comments. It's greatly appreciated. Hit that like button if you are enjoying the show. And remember to hit that subscribe button. As always, we'll be back after the Dundee game. 27th, 28th, maybe, depending on the hangovers, to review the game on Boxing Day and also discuss the upcoming January transfer window, as we've said. For those of you that do enjoy the episode via audio, or if you have missed the beginning of the show, the audio version will be coming out this evening. Wi-Fi dependent. Callum's still down in Kirkcaldy. But it is only Wi-Fi because this show will now be available on YouTube as soon as the recording has ended. But Dens Park Choir said, I asked him how he thinks Dundee can attack Aberdeen. And just on that point you make about bringing in Calvin Ramsey, is he thinks their best opportunity is it's crucial that they take confidence from that victory at Dens Park and attack Aberdeen down the wings. They did it with great effect at Dens, and we saw last night there when Calvin Ramsey and similarly Johnny Hayes or Jack McKenzie, whoever plays in that left back role, like to push up the pitch. Space gets left in behind. Now they've got McMullen, who's provided a couple of assists in recent weeks, good with the ball at his feet and good deliveries into the box. We've also seen Luke McCowan as well, young midfielders popping up with a few goals in recent weeks for Dundee as well. He'll take great joy in exploiting any space left there. So is that something that we maybe have to be a bit cautious with in that team selection, that we don't leave ourselves exposed? Because we have shown this season to when we do expose ourselves at the back, more often than not we concede.
Yeah, it's just reminded me of so many times that it happened. But I think so much time we need to look in terms of what gives us the best option sort of offensively, as well on the flip side of that. But we do just need to be cautious. I think with McCrory probably coming back in, that gives you a bit more confidence too. He's got a lot more pace, I think it's fair to say, than Declan Gallagher on recovery too.
Mm-hmm.
I think just in terms of, especially in terms of the two young fullbacks, they will learn with more experience and more game time, with a bit more discipline, and also when to go, when to stay, and to be a bit more cautious, I think, too, which will only come with games. But it is something we do need to be wary of. We've been punished there a lot, being caught out just with sort of Bates and McCrory or whoever else back there, with the other two fullbacks pushed up. So it is something we have to be wary of. And, as you mentioned, those players particularly capable of causing problems. And McMullen's got a great head on him as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, it does. And I suppose the other threat is Danny Mullen, who has found himself in the goals until Dundee kind of hit this bit barren spell that they're currently in. And Dennis Parkwire, he said that he's an instinctive finisher, which is probably a danger for us. But the bigger danger is that, and a critique that Dundee fans had of him previously, was he didn't show up often enough. But this season, he's shown up in the big games and grabbed the goal. This is a big game for Dundee, given the way the results have been going across the league recently. They're currently sitting 11th in the table, finding themselves 2 points behind Ross County, but have got a 2-point cushion of their own to St Johnstone, who prop up the Premiership table. They'll be looking at this as an opportunity to, obviously not wanting to slip to the bottom of the table going into this break, but to just maybe even look at giving themselves a cushion if the St Johnstone game, which is the early kickoff on Boxing Day, if they lose, they could potentially see themselves 5 points clear of bottom place. Which obviously we hope is not the case, if they were to grab a win at Pittodrie.
Yeah, but I don't think, as much as I have reason to be confident, obviously I think we are a better side all round than Dundee. They have caused us problems, and we can't afford to be complacent, because they will be up for this as well, especially going into the break, as you say, looking to provide a bit more cushion. On Danny Mullen, I believe he was also on the books at Aberdeen in his youth days as well, so might have a point to prove there too. You never know. Can't imagine Jason Cummings, however, will be involved.
No. I'm sure he's still sitting out after his off the field instances. And we speak about Dundee, the threats that they might have, but we know in our own team we've got plenty of threats that we possess. Just look at the last home game with Marley Watkins and Christian Ramirez both bagging in that game. Both very much off the boil last night, which is quite concerning, that when they're both when they're on form, they're both on form, and when they're not on form, they're both not on form. It would really be good if they could offset that against each other. But Dundee have been pretty poor defensively in their trip to Ibrox. Some of the goals were very calamitous. Just take a look at the highlights of their trip to Dingwall, in which they very much threw away that game. Defensively really shot themselves in the foot. They're missing Lee Ashcroft through injury. And, Dens Parkwire expects Liam Fontaine to play, potentially with Ryan Sweeney. Liam Fontaine had a very good display against Hearts, despite Dundee falling to that defeat. But given Dundee's defensive record and how poor they've been, that has got to be something that Stephen Glass looks at exploiting on Boxing Day.
Yeah, 100%. As much as you mentioned, those players not on form, Ryan Hedges too, they do have the attributes to be able to cause any defence problems. Least of all, perhaps one that is a bit, as you mentioned, they might give away come to his goals at times. So, but the important thing is these players need to be ready. They need to have that decision making on point and be more clinical in the final third to capitalise on these sort of defensive woes Dundee have, which I think is probably more where our problem lies. Will they be on their day? Consistency at times a real problem all over the park for us, but up top too. So it's just, I don't know. I'm now working myself into a shoot about whether to be confident of this or not. I started off being like, yeah, we'll be no problem. We're better than them. Oh, God.
Yeah, I liked how though he says their best defensive player is left back Jordan Marshall, and he's not sure if he'll be fit enough for the weekend's game, which would see Cammy Kerr potentially switch from right back to left back with Christy Elliott filling in at right back, and he does say that he's like hit or miss with the Premiership maybe not being his level, and I do like how his message finishes off saying we have a knack for conceding cheap goals from poor defending and mistakes. Don't know whether he's been watching Dundee or Aberdeen recently because that's pretty much what we do.
Essentially, yeah. Did he mention Charlie Adam at all? What's going on with him? Is he able to feature given his alleged
he did not,
but
antics? I think he can play because I'm sure he did play at the weekend against Hearts.
Okay, interesting. Well, also him, I suppose he's able to, as much as he maybe allegedly causes himself some problems, he can cause us problems as well, as we well know, and especially in a game without Scott Brown. It could be a concern because obviously Charlie Adam does have quality there. He was playing in the Premier League for Blackpool and Liverpool for a reason. Okay, physically maybe not at the peak of his game, but technically still very, very, very capable. So it's something we need to be wary about.
Yeah, actually looking, he didn't play against Hearts. Nor did he play against Hibs. So that would actually be a big miss for Dundee because even though you said, without Scott Brown, but he kind of schooled Scott Brown in that fixture at Dens Park, in all fairness. So that would definitely be a miss for Dundee coming up here. And I suppose, kind of a theme from last season was that midfield battle. We weren't strong enough. And if we can dominate that midfield, hopefully we can put enough pressure on that quite leaky Dundee defence at times and get a breakthrough. I think the first goal is going to be massively important in the game. But I think what's going to be the overriding thing is kind of the atmosphere. This was a game that was set to have a sold-out Red Shed main stand and lower deck, and is now going to be with just 500 fans. Sorry to make you all feel bad, if it wasn't bad enough, but it was a game that was, and I'm sure that the Dundee faithful would have travelled in very good numbers up to this game, and it's just going to be a game played with barely a peep, and it's just really disappointing.
Yeah, well, I think I've just realised I think I'm wearing the wrong colours to preview a Dundee game, by the way.
Well, I like how I kind of thought you were more of an away kit with the yellow seeping through.
It is the away kit. There we go. Yeah, so there we go. But no, yeah, it is a shame that it will be played. With 500 people, it's not going to be any sort of atmosphere. The difference between 0 and 500 in terms of a stadium that could potentially hold, like 20,000, it's going to be terrible atmosphere-wise. So let's hope that the players don't need a lift and can lift themselves and dust themselves off after that performance at Easter Road.
Yeah, I just hope that the product on the pitch isn't adversely affected by the lack of crowd. I'm sure it'll be very difficult for the players to get up for a game that was supposed to have a raucous atmosphere and is not anymore. But look, if we end up scraping a 1-0 right now, I'll take that because it would be good to get back on track before the winter break. Going this currently sitting outside of the top six. Hibs have got a tough game away at Dundee United, so maybe an opportunity for us to maybe sneak back into the top six before the end of the year, and then look to build a charge maybe up the table in that second half of the season. But Callum, thanks very much for joining me live on Red Tinted Glasses YouTube today. To everyone that's been tuning in this season, we hope from both me and Callum, we hope you have a very Merry Christmas. Enjoy the football as much as you can on Boxing Day, and we will be back on the 27th, 28th to do a review of the game. But yeah, just thanks again for your support. Wishing you a Merry Christmas, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button whether you're watching or tuning in via audio.
Feliz Navidad.
I think that's a perfect way to end it.